Hello, it's Michael again. I have just rolled out of bed, had kind of a late morning, got my coffee almost brewed, and I've decided to pop on and do some more live coding. Last night, I had hopped on for a couple of hours and got proper file saving going. By proper, I mean not just that you save to a file, but that you go through the whole Monty and you query the temp folder from Windows, and you get a random file name, and you write to the temp folder first. Then once that file is saved, you can move it to the destination, and that makes it so that if something happens in the middle of the save, like your power cuts out or something like that, that you're not corrupting any data. There's a couple of things left over in that function that I still need to deal with. I think I'm going to try and wrap those up this morning. And then following that, I want to create a helper class to allow you to just like stream out data to a file. Presently, going into the file system I've created, go back to file. I've got two functions for handling text. Load text file simply just takes a file that you specify, rapidly copies all the text into a string. And then save text file is the method that we just created last night. And that simply takes, you provide the path, you provide a string of stuff that you want to save out. Maybe I should reverse these names in string and out string, because that might be a little confusing from the developer perspective. But it just takes the string and dumps it to the file. So it dumps it to the temporary file, then atomically moves it to the destination. There's a couple more things I got to wrap up in there. After that's done, I'm going to want to create a counterpart to text file reader. Text file reader is a helper class that you create the object. You can optionally pass the path of the file that you want to work on, or you can just create it and then change which file it's got open on the fly. And then you use a read next line to get each line of the text file until it's exhausted, and you can check for end of file and things. But I wanted to make a counterpart to this called text file writer. So if I'm in a situation where I've got to throw a bunch of text into a file, and they're not all stored in a contiguous location, like they're not in a string already, that you don't have to like construct a string and then call save text file. Instead, you would just create a text file writer, and then start feeding it text, and then when you're done, you close it, and then it closes the file and moves it into the final destination from the temp folder. But first, let's go to the save text file function and wrap up where we left off. So I don't think I did anything at all after the stream yesterday. I think I just left it exactly where it was. The first problem with the way that this works is that the directories that are dereferenced from the vpath may not exist. So by vpath, I mean that when you provide the path here, it's actually not literally the path on the Windows file system. We use the virtual file system set up by Enterprise. When you specify, I'll go down to where we set this up. when you specify in your path C slash, that will put you in the content directory for your program. So in Windows, that's going to be in program files, and then slash the developer name slash the game name. But on Mac, this is going to be within the app bundle itself, where the content file is stored inside the app bundle. And we have similar drive letters for other locations. The U is going to be for the user-specific app data. G is going to be for the global or the machine-specific app data. Save is for the game save folder, which is actually a separate location from your user app data on Windows. And then we got temp, which gets you the temp folder. All of these can be redirected using the command line argument when you're debugging, and that's how I it's a little helper thing that I use to simplify the process of developing a game on Windows and on Mac, I guess, because it's a little bit helpful to be able to move the stuff. Basically, when I specify the data dir when debugging using this, instead of using the Windows or the Mac APIs to get the addresses for these locations, we just use whatever we provide in the command line. So in the case of Enterprise, I have it redirecting to my project folder for the game, for my test game sandbox, inside the data folder. So as I do stuff within the app data folders or the temp folder, I can actually just see them pop up in here and inspect it. So for example, move to text file.txt. When we were working yesterday, I could see that the temp file was being created in here, and then being moved into the user folder correctly. And when I go to actually ship the game, it will, instead of using these, it'll use the actual temp folder and the actual user folder for the roaming app data, and so on. But part of the problem is that if these folders don't exist, or the folders leading up to them don't exist, like if I didn't have a data folder in here, then the API would just not work, because the create file and move file does not bother to create the intermediate folders on the path. I need a way to do that. And I was doing some searching for a good function in the Windows API that does this. And it turns out that there actually isn't one. By that I mean that there is one, but it's deprecated and there's no replacement for it. I think it's like make sure directory path exists. So this function would have done exactly what I needed it to do. So when I go to set up these paths at the program launch, I could just say make sure directory path exists, and then if the path doesn't exist, then it'll create it and all the intermediate folders. But the problem with this is that it's technically not current. This is listed underneath the where did it go? Go to requirements, startup platform. Hang on a second. Am I did I just misread this last night? Because I thought that what it had said was that this was deprecated. API. It was like, oh, no way. Is this, can I use this? If I can, then that would just make things way simpler. Yeah, maybe I was looking at like sh create directory or something. shcreate directory is a slightly different version of the create directory method that I've been using here. The biggest difference being that it creates all the intermediate directories too. So I guess that one is not safe. And then make sure directory path exists. I guess that does work. So if it does, then I think I'll just use this. C++ 17 has a new file system API. If we go to cppreference.com, this file system library. And if I was to use this, then it would have a function called create directories, which I can use to do the same thing. I'm not using the file system API. I've opted to just use the platform specific stuff for handling files. I'm not sure if I care enough to stick to my guns on that one, but that was the decision that I had made earlier on, was to just do it myself. And then I can handle low-level details the way that I prefer when they come up. But if I go to my precompiled header, EPPCH, I've already got a lot of standard library stuff in here. I would have to add the entire file system API just to do a couple of things. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and go forth with make sure directory path exists. Yeah, I could have sworn there was a reason why I couldn't use this, I thought. But it was late, and I guess I may have just misread the situation. Because if I look down at requirements, it just requires the debug help.dll 5.1. It doesn't mention a specific target for Windows. Let's just make sure 5.1 is available. Debug help library is implemented by, even though it's included in all supported versions of Windows, it is rarely the most current version of debug help available. The version of debug help that ships in Windows has reduced functionality from the other releases. The name debug help kind of suggests that it's for debugging. For that reason alone, I may be hesitating. All debug help functions are single-threaded, yeah. Let me press my coffee while I mull this over. Off camera here, I've got a little 1-cup French press, which is fantastic. It was a gift. It allows me to have freshly brewed coffee, but disallows me from going overboard and having 5 cups. All right. Yeah, I'm thinking that this will help, but for the purposes of a shipping game, I'm hesitant to link in the debug help library because it sounds like it's available on all versions of Windows, and it seems like the function that I want is likely to be available on most systems, but yeah, it's not necessarily universal. Not in the sense that the Win32 API stuff or the standard library stuff is available. So I'm just going to go ahead and move on without it. The alternative to using create directory here is to use the C++ 17 library or standard library for file system. And I feel like I don't want to set it up just for only the purpose of getting a directory made. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm actually going to recursively call create directory. Those are some of the suggestions I've seen on Stack Overflow when I was researching this. Is that literally folks would either use the Boost library at the time or the C++ 17 library to do the create directories call. Or they would have to recursively do this, because if they use the sh create directories, then technically that's deprecated. It may work, but it hasn't been officially supported since Windows XP. So that's getting pretty old at this point, and it might not be available in years to come. So I've got the converted temp path here. And the converted temp path is the path to the temp directory as determined by either the Win32 API or the override I've got with the command line argument, which I use for debugging. I need to make sure that this path exists before I use it in this function. So the best place to do that is actually not here. It is instead when I define the directory. So if I go to file, actually I think it's still in the Win32 file, down here, set platform data paths. This function is called only when I'm not overriding with the command line arguments. So I can actually, as soon as I get the path from here, and I've got the user dir path, and I convert the backslashes to slashes. As soon as I've got the path here, I can use it to create the entire directory tree up to that location. Now, in the case of the temp folder, that's only helpful when you are using the override via command line, because in a shipping game, the temp dir path is guaranteed to exist. So for the purposes of debugging, that's the only situation where I want to make sure the folder exists, and that's determined here. So if I got a file in it, the way that I have command line options, I have a simple little API called application register command line option that any part of your game can just simply call and register a command line, and it'll extend the help for the -h command for getting all the commands that the application can do. And then after that's done, we can specify get command line option here. So we got get command line option for the contents directory and for the data directory. And the data directory simply takes those 4 other directories: the user folder, the global folder, which I used to call the machine folder. Maybe I should rename that. The user folder, the global folder, the save game directory, and the temp directory. Moves them all into one folder. So at this point, I would say I got the command line path front. I would create the directories here. But now I'm thinking about portability again, because this whole method is not platform specific at all yet. So I could do like an if def, do like win32, and then just write platform specific code within this function. What I think I'm going to do instead is I'm going to make a helper method that's implemented platform specific. So I'll do this as a private method, a static private method of the file class, which I use static classes to implement my systems in general, because it allows me to do private members and private methods and things that you can, for example, application needs the ability to call file init, but I don't want that to be exposed to the developer. So I make this whole thing a class and make everything private that I don't want the developer to have. And in here, I will do a helper function for static void create full path. I don't know if that's a great name for it. Let's say create I'm gonna follow a naming scheme like that one. I'm gonna do ensure directory path exists, and this will either create the path or just it won't return anything. It won't have any error condition. It'll just either ensure that the path exists or create it. So if it doesn't already exist, it'll make it. I suppose there would be some error condition where it finds that it doesn't exist and it also can't create it. But if that's the case, then you've kind of got a problem anyway, because you need these basic folders to be set up. So what I think I'll do is, instead of doing like a return bool to tell the developer whether the path exists, I will instead put an assertion in there, because the way that I'm determining that I determine the path in a shipping game is guaranteed by the operating system to exist and be available, because I'm using their API to get those locations. The only time that this would be a problem would be if you're overriding to a bad location using the command line argument. So I think that if somebody does that, if somebody changes their command line argument to say, I want the data directory to be at this location that I can't actually write to, then I'll just have the application assert fail, and then maybe put a helpful message in the assertion message to handle that for us. So I need to know the path. I use std string for pretty much everything. I'm wondering if I need it to be wide string though. You know what? No, I don't, because under here, it's underneath the command line arguments, it's going to be a narrow width string, and underneath the platform arguments, it is actually already being converted. But if we look at the create folder API, I may need to have a create directory. Yeah, it takes a wide string. So actually, I may need to have both. I mean, I may need to have a narrow string and a wide string. Except for the narrow string will be, I'm just going to do it narrow string, and then actually this should probably be const string reference. And then I can widen it when I go to call the Windows API stuff. Yeah, so this implementation is going to go in the Win32 file. The way I've got this structured in general is that by default, a file will be intended for use on both platforms, with maybe like one or two platform specific things within if-def blocks. But if there's functions that totally need to be written differently from one platform to the other, I will just move those definitions into platform specific files. So I've got a file win32.cpp, and everything inside of this file is going to be ifdef win32 and only available on Windows. Then file macOS.mm, which is Objective C++ is how you program C++ stuff on Mac to do like Cocoa integration stuff. And then this will have the definitions that are just for macOS. So on this platform file, I want to put the helper function down here. And I need that parameter, which is a const std string reference. That should probably be path instead of string, which is a little generic. And the reason why I'm doing this as a static class member instead of just a local function is because I need to be able to call this from file.cpp from platform generic code. So I'll need to make an implementation of this in the Mac specific file .cpp as well, or file macOS.mm. All right, so the gist of here is that we've got a narrow string path that we don't know whether it exists, and we need to ensure that it does. So we could just recursively find the backslash in the path, and then ensure that it exists up to a point. So I guess the first thing I'll need to do is I'll need to make a wide string with backslashes instead of forward slashes. So std w string wide path, and that's going to be equal to I gotta do a wide conversion, so that would be UTF-8. Yeah, so actually I need to leave it blank first and then call UTF-8, just because of the way I've wide path, just because of the way that API is set up, and then UTF-8 to wcar, and the in string is going to be the path, and the out string is going to be wide path. Yep. What's widen path? I guess that's a Windows API thing. There we go. And now the wide path contains the wide version of the path with forward slashes still. So I need to call slashes to backslashes on wide path, because the Windows API takes backslashes, and forward slashes are the universal norm everywhere else. So I got to convert from my standard of using forward slashes. to recursively ensure that each folder exists. So I guess to make this as short as possible, or make this as simple or less complex as possible, I should start by confirming that the entire path doesn't exist, and then like go back one level at a time until I get to a point where the path does exist, and then from there create the directories going all the way up. So to check whether the folder exists, what I could do is I could just call create directory on it. I have to Google all this stuff because I don't work with file system stuff very often. I'm not a professional developer. I'm just a self-taught C++ dude who wanted to make a game engine. Well, you know what? I just realized that I might have already made a helper function for this. I do have a function called exists. Does it work on folders? It just calls fopen. So it actually only works on the file. Fopen, you don't open directories that way. So I'll need to do something else. I've seen this pop up before, stat. It's not actually in the Windows, the Microsoft documentation. This seems like it's more of a POSIX thing, but this person claims that it works on Windows. Except for that was in 2013, so. Stat, fstat, lstat, get file stats. Oh, here we go. Let's see what we got. Okay, yeah, so stat appears to be available. Let's go down to requirements. Compatibility. Oh, okay, so I guess this is part of the C runtime, so C standard stuff. So I guess that's safe. It's got an underscore at the beginning, which is different. I wonder why it's got an underscore in front instead of. Did this guy know? Here we go. Where's the MSN documentation page for stat as opposed to stat? You know what? The more that I work with this stuff, the more I'm thinking that I should just go ahead and do the C++ 17 file system API. Because that's two big things that I want to do that are handled generically by that library already. Is there anything in here that I would want to use besides? I'm not a fan of replacing the strings with a path class when referring to a path. I don't think that's great. Might be adding too much complexity. but create directories and exists I could surely use. And I don't need to provide an actual path class. I'm assuming that path has got a that there's a converter or a I'm assuming that it just automatically converts to a string. Or maybe not. Maybe these functions take both strings and file system paths. No, they only take file system paths, but I'm presuming that the path can be created from its constructor. Can be created from a string type source. Yeah, so I can use those APIs without actually using the STD file system path. I can just use strings like I've been doing before, which I think is what I want to do. But there's all this stuff I don't want to use either. There might be some obscure situation where I want to make a symlink, though. For example, if ever we're going to be working on a game across a network, I might use symlinks to link the content directory of a game to a common location on a server, and then everybody can stream in the stuff they don't have. Yeah, you know what? Let's go ahead and do it. I'm gonna go ahead and just implement it. So first thing I'll do is go to ep.pch, which is my precompiled header for this library. And whenever it comes to standard libraries or libraries that I will basically never be updating, I tend to add them to the precompiled header instead of in the actual destination header, because that way it's only compiled to once and you don't have to recompile it every time you make a change to a CPP file. At least in theory, that's how it's supposed to work. I will put it underneath upstream. And hopefully adding file system now, I feel like what this is going to do is it's going to drive me nuts that I don't use it everywhere, and I'll have to like re-review all of the file system code and neurotically replace all of the API calls with file system calls instead. But for our purposes with the getting the paths, those paths still need to be gathered by the Windows API, with the exception, I think, of the temp folder. Yeah, because you can get a temp directory path call from here, which actually gives you the temp location, I believe. Oh, that's interesting. It says C Windows temp, even though it should be giving you the one in the user folder. Okay, so yeah, it is supposed to be the one that you get with get temp path. So this is a generic way of doing what we already have done, of getting a temp folder. I don't think there's one for known directories. Yeah, so like for getting the game save location, the user app data, or data. Yeah, for getting those extra locations, besides the temp folder, you would have to use the Win32 API still. But anyway, we've added the file system API. Now we can use file create directory. So going back to file, I can actually undo the creation of ensure directory path exists, because we can just use create directories for that. And same thing goes in here. We can get rid of this guy. Cool. And then in here, we would just use std file system, I believe, and then create directories. And this will take the path that you need to have created. And I think it takes forward slashes. I'm assuming it does, because that's the portable way to handle this. But let's double check. It seems like the most time-consuming part of programming for me is always looking up a new API that I've never used before. That might seem obvious to people who are programmers for a living, but yeah, so there's no mention of the word slash in here, but in the example they use forward slashes. So I'm just going to go ahead and presume that we don't need to do backslashes. So we got the path already in the virtual path. Did I not? Where do I do the vpath to native path? I guess I do that. Oh, I don't even. What? Load text file. Do I not even use it until after the temp path? Oh, because convert temp path is already converted to, right. So converted temp path actually already is an absolute path to the temp folder, so that's perfectly fine. So what I would need to do is I would need to say std file system. Oh, but I don't. My brain is all disorganized. So actually, I don't need to operate here at all. I need to operate here. When we identify that we're redirecting the data directory, and inside set platform data paths. So underneath set platform data paths, we are using the temp path provided. We are not using a subdirectory, so I actually don't need to do anything here. I just use the temp path directly. I do need to ensure that these paths exist, because I'm not just putting the data, my data in the user directory path. I am doing it in the path /developer name /app name. So I need to create those paths. Let me do that right now, even though I'm mostly focused on the temp directory right now. So that'll be, these are currently in white path. No, that's just a regular UTF-8 path. Perfect. So I got backslashes and slashes. So user dir path is already perfect the way that it is right now. So I can use create directories and then provide user dir path. And then I think that's literally it. Let me double check. So underneath directories is option 3 here. So 1 and 3, the overload that does not take error code parameter. Wait. Okay. 3 executes 1 for every element of P that does not already exist. If P already exists, the function does nothing. This condition is not treated as an error. I do get a true and a false for whether the directory is resolved. And there is an exception thrown. The overload that does not take a std error code parameter, which 3 does not, create directories does. Oh, it does have an error code, yeah. The overload that does not take the parameter throws file system error on OS API errors. So yeah, I need to get the std error code out so that it's not trying to throw an exception. So it'll be std error code, and then it takes it by reference. Create directories, yeah, by reference. So I don't do a pointer, I just do EC. And now I have an error code. So now this won't throw exceptions, and I have something to check for the error code. I need to make sure that everything works correctly, though. So I need to do one thing I could do is I could just do EP assert and just assert that this returns true. Because if it returns true, then it's good. If it returns false, then it's bad. And this is all happening during initialization, so the program hasn't fully launched at this point. So if somebody specifies the wrong path, then it's not like I'm going to be interrupting their work in any big way to have the program just crash at that point. The alternative would be that I would just generate a warning and then use the default path anyway. Oh wait, what am I saying? I'm in the set platform data paths. So this path is actually going to be created on a shipping machine. So really, there's not any good reason for this to fail. But if it does fail, we need to get some information about that. So one way I could do that would be to create a modal pop-up for the user to see the problem. I'm going to go ahead and use assert because assert has in distribution builds, it actually already does display a platform error dialog. So like if I'm in dist making a shipping copy of the game, it already does make a pop-up for the user, which would allow error reporting to point people to the right direction. So what I'll do is I'll do an assert for these cases, and then put a helpful error message. So that's the condition. I'm going to use assert F instead of regular assert, and I'll do file set platform data paths. Unable to create. Unable to create user data path. And actually I can do a little bit better than that, I think. Well, not quite yet. Right now there's a problem with the way that I have the assert message formatting, is that I in cases where I want to like provide an additional parameter for providing additional data in the assertion message, I can't. Eventually I'm going to be overhauling how this is done anyway, and then I can ensure that I can do stuff like that. I'm just going to say unable to create user data path. What I want to do is I want to not only say user data path, I want to specify the exact path that can't be created. But that's just a problem with how I have assertions right now, so I'm going to put this in as a to-do. There we go. And then I guess if I'm asserting that, I don't need to worry about the error code. Because any time one of those exceptions is thrown, theoretically, I would be getting a false return anyway. Just to be sure, I'm taking a look at what the file system errors can be. Store error code. Yeah, so the error code, I can just do .what and it'll catch that. Cool. All right, so I just need to do this for each. The only reason why I'm doing error code, providing an error code even if I never reference it, is because I don't want an exception to be thrown. I want to get that modal error message when there's a failure. So Control D on that, and then move it down here, and we'll do it for machine dir path. And then save dir path. And temp dir path is always going to work. I don't need to check that because get temp path. I'm just using it directly, and it's guaranteed to exist. All right, so that's all of the paths created for the shipping code. And if I go back to the debug here, I need to do the same for these. So if command line dot size, meaning that it's got a command line parameter telling us what to do, and I will do std file system error, std error code. You see, and then I will do in this case, I've got, I'll put this down at the bottom. In this case, I've got an if statement handling forward slashes or backslashes, because not because of the platform, but because of the command line option. People can specify forward or backslashes on the command line. So I want to support them both. Backslashes to slashes. Command line path forward, front. This is a little confusing. Dot front, dot back. Oh yeah, this is the trailing slash. So it actually, what it does is it just either adds or it doesn't add the trailing slash in between. Perfect. All right, so at this point, I've got the paths already created. So I'll do std file system create directories, and I'll provide user dir path. Oop. And then the error code out. And do this again for the other four, which is machine dir path, temp dir path. Wait, yeah, do that at the bottom. Temp dir path and save dir path. Cool. So now I've got those created. I should handle if they don't get created. I'll just assert those as well. This is not going to be, while a gamer might technically like mod their game by redirecting their data folders. That's not very likely, and if they do, then it'll be on them to worry about making sure that the paths can be created, that they're picking valid paths. So I'll just go ahead and wrap these in assertions as well. And just be all right with the thing crashing if there's a problem. So I guess I might as well just copy all of these. I'll just copy the help message and okay. Unable to create user data path. Global data path. Oops, I hit Control B instead of Control V. Fell for one of the classic blunders. Save data path. And temp data path. All right. And I don't need the error code if it's just going to fail. Cool. All right. Yeah, that should be enough then. So if I was to remove the folder, I don't think I need the stuff in this second content folder. I actually am only working out of this content folder at present, and when I was working on something else a long time ago, I used to use the stuff in this folder. So for my purposes, I'm gonna keep those. I'm just gonna call it old. And now if everything is working, I should be able to press F5 to build and then just have it automatically create the data folder and the temp folder and the user dir folder without needing to worry about the rest. Do I need anything to be removed here? There's the move. There's the write. I do need to get the temp file name as a wcard to use the API. Yeah, so I think that's everything. F5, and we'll see what I screwed up and how bad. It's taking a significant while to compile in this case because I just added the file system header to my precompiled header so that it's going to be available everywhere. So all of the translation units need to be recompiled. Alrighty, what do we got? Unable to create user data path. That is interesting. So eSoftware Enterprise Sandbox Data User. Why would that be? Why would I not be allowed to create that? No, it did. It created user data user. The folder exists, but it returned false. I'm taking a look at the error code return. I'm a little confused trying to inspect the contents of the error code, because the underneath my val it just says 0. If that's actually the error code as a 0, then that would suggest that there was no problem. Did I mess up the assert? Because the condition of create directories true if a directory was created. Oh, you know what? If the directory already exists, then it would still return false, wouldn't it? Okay, so the assertion is wrong. It did create the folder, but did it? So the assertion failed on user data path, but that would suggest that the folder already existed. And I'm sure it didn't. Let's try this again. I'll leave the folder where it was. So it fails on the same point. Instead of doing assertions, let me do, I'll copy out the function calls. And then wrap them in an if, and if there's a problem, then I'm going to do ep error, and I'm going to print ec.what or ec.message, which I guess prints a string containing the what the problem was. Yeah. Oops. And I need cool. And we'll see what happens. If there's still a problem, it'll. Oh, it seems to be working. Oh, fascinating. Okay, so all of the folders did get created. And I've got the boot file. And none of the functions return false? That can't possibly be correct, right? Couldn't it? How could it be correct? Because I didn't actually change the function call. All I did was not wrap it in an assertion. Because unless this is returning false and ec.message is empty, that would make sense. Let me do F5. No, though, because they're not getting triggered. I put a breakpoint on each of the message print lines, meaning that create directories is always returning true. What the heck? What's so different between this and this? So it calls this create directories, user path EC. If it returns false, there's a problem. And it triggers the assertion and so on. So what if I was to just EP trace the results? So this one I am just printing the return value of each of the create directory calls. I had to scroll up to see it. False, 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 false. Yeah, so it does return false when it doesn't need to create the folders. So if I go into this guy and I delete just the save directory, for example, and then go to do it, then it should be false, false, true, false. Right? False, false. No, it's all false. But it did create the save directory. True if a directory was created for the directory p resolved to. Maybe it's referring to a parent directory. And just to be crystal clear, p is the path, yeah. So if I was to go and delete the entire data folder, press F5. They still say false. What in the ever-living heck? It says false, even though it did have to create the folder. Why is that? Am I missing something? I'm just gonna Google it. Okay, that's interesting. So I saw here on the MSBC community that having a trailing slash causes it to always return false. So I always need the slash in there though, because of the way that I resolve file paths. So this is going to cause something else to break. But for the purposes of testing, I am going to remove the extra slash from the path generation code and see whether the functions still return false. Well, I guess they will because I haven't deleted the data folder. Oh, is it still working for some reason? That's bonkers. I must be doing something smart in the get vpath function. But let me go ahead and oh, that's weird. It put the moved user file in data. Did it mess up my content folder? Apparently not. Apparently it read the sprite file just fine. Let me delete all of these and try again. Okay, now they say true. And the folders got created. Okay, yeah, so I guess it's always going to return false just because of the way that I put a trailing slash on all the paths when I'm working. And I guess that's I guess that's okay. That's weird. That I think that seems like it should be a problem. Should be maybe an implementation issue. But apparently somebody from Microsoft said that this is not a bug because it's yes, it's an intentional change in behavior. Decomposes into plus change the decomposition rules for password trans slashes. They now have an empty file name element inserted at the end. C tester decomposes into C directory, and then as if there's a okay, so you can see the decomposition underneath TS rules is effectively tster dot, and dot just means this folder. So create directories returns true. Created the directory that the create directories created under C++17 rules. Names a file with an empty name within tester. Since create directories didn't create a directory with that name. Okay, so I guess it returns false because under the C++17 decomposition, having the trailing slash means that I'm technically specifying an empty file with no name at the end, and that's not being created ever, so it'll always return false. If that's the case, then I don't ever need to assert on create directories, and I can't do anything with the return value of create directories. What I have to do is I have to check the error code. If there's a problem. So can I use the same error code then? Or same error code object? I guess I could, even if it, yeah. So at this point, the error code here doesn't have a problem. Like if I was to go ec dot value, it should be 0 automatically. There should be no problem. Let me go to its page, file system error. Wait, that's not right. STD error code. So platform dependent category. I want a platform generic way of confirming that there's no problem. In my understanding, both Mac OS and Windows implementations should be error code 0 for no problem, but yeah. So let's okay. So I guess there's maybe a non-zero chance that some implementation somewhere will not use the will use 0 for an error condition, but it doesn't seem likely to me. So what we'll do then is we'll just leave that, and then we'll have to test the error code after every call. So get rid of the business there with the assertions. Not wrapping this in an if statement. Instead, we will call EP assert f, and we will assert that EC dot value is equal to 0. If we were to just do assert EC, then actually this would probably be a little bit more clear. At this point, we're asserting that there's no error code because the Boolean evaluates to true if the value is non-zero. So this just means we're if there is an error, or we're checking that there's no error. That's probably going to be pretty readable, and then we can paste in the message handler. Set platform data paths, unable to create user data path. Okay, and then that should be good enough for everyone. Because even if the assertion doesn't get rewritten back to 0 in the event of a successful call, I'm asserting on every line anyway. So if at any point there's a an error code, then we will know that there will be a problem. We're crashing anyway. All right, global save data path and temp data path. All right. All right, so I think I've got it figured out now. So this should be creating all the folders. I need to do the same now for the platform specific sections. So I've got a valid user dir path now. Backslash is the slashes, so user dir path is correct. Now in here I've got these wrapped around in assert f's, but they are not valid because the return value is always false, just because of the way that I have paths set up. And then I need to call EP assert f, and we're asserting that EC does not have a value on it. All right, good. I think that's what we need. To make this all a little bit more readable, I think I'm going to put this down. Move these all down below the path identification code. And we've only got to set these 3 and assert on them. All right. Cool. And then these will be left alone. Cool. So we've got the creation code here. Now I need to do the same thing for set platform content path. It's relatively simple because on the Windows platform, the program will ultimately be installed within the program files directory already. So I don't even do a lookup for the final content path. I just use content slash, and it's just going to be relative to the executable. So there's actually already no need to specify a content path, but I use this just in case the user wants to override the content directory using the command line. And on Mac OS, this is actually part of the app bundle, not part of a system folder. But yeah, we just need to make sure that folder is created already. I might as well use the same API. Cool. And did I get the? I need to change the file, the function name of this assertion. I still have this saying, oh, it's just a net. I still have this reflecting the function name that I copied out from the system side. Eventually, I'm going to be updating my assertions to handle things like telling us where in which method call triggered the assertion. They already trigger breakpoints, but yeah. Okay, that should be that. Finally, it took way longer than needed to, probably. Seems to be working fine. If we go into the data folder, I think this was created at 11:04, so that's left over. If I was to hit Shift Delete and delete that folder now, and I do F5, it'll create the data folder, it'll create the machine, the save, the temp, and the users. And you can see that I'm still running that test from last night where I've got the I'm making a text string and making the text file within the temp folder and then moving it, so it's moving correctly because there's nothing left in the temp folder. Yeah, okay, that seems to be perfect. Do I need to do anything else now that I'm using the file system API? I guess this is realistically enough information for anybody. Now I'll leave the to-do note in there because if this ships onto a platform and some user somewhere has some weird issue where they can't create the data folders that are needed, then I'll need to know exactly what the path is. Cool. And because we're doing all of that work up front, creating the folders prior to application launch, we don't actually need to worry about it in here, which is great because you're not doing a recursive check on a path is helpful. It's not. There's no point in recursively checking the folders every time you go to save a file. Because what are the odds that somebody's going to go in and delete a folder that you need? And if they do, you're going to have problems anyway, so that should be fine. And then cool. So now that we've got the save text file, the very simple just write a string to a text file going, I'll want to move on to working on the helper class, the text file writer, the counterpart to text file reader, to allow me to open up a file, stream stuff into it, and then when you close the file, have that move over from the temp file or temp folder to the final destination. But first, I'm going to take a little break, and we'll come back and work on that afterward. Alrighty, got some tea steeping. Now I'm back. Where we left off, we had just gotten folder creation handled successfully when using save text file. Now I want to create a text file writer class, which is going to make it easier for a dev to write to a text file one line at a time, or one string at a time, so not necessarily with a with just one line. You can have a string that includes new line characters, but it'll dump that all out to a file. And then after you close the file, that's when it copies from the temp directory. So yeah, I guess we'll just start with class text file writer. I like to put public stuff up front when we're talking about something that a developer will use, because then they can just go to, say, text file writer, what can it do? And they can say, all right, so this is how you make it, and this is how you use it, and so on. And the private stuff is not right at the top where it's confusing anything. So I guess the text file writer needs pretty similar looking constructors. One where it doesn't open anything, and one where it does. So I'll just copy and paste the constructors here. Open a file handle during construction. I don't think I actually need a need Doxygen documentation for that constructor, but I'll leave it for the moment. I'm not even sure what that looks like. Let me control save on these files. Let me run the Doxygen real quick. I think it's Control Shift C. Yeah, opens up the command line. I use Doxygen to generate documentation, which is why I go through and put all those triple slashes everywhere. Because it'll give you a nice description of how you're supposed to use things in the HTML. Oh, I need classes. INI writer, text file writer. Yeah, so I don't think I. Yeah, I'll leave the description on the constructor, and just not put one on the default, because that's kind of obvious what it does. Even if you're looking at the documentation, it's clear that it just makes it empty. All right. Here we go. I'm in the wrong file again. There we go, back in the header. So I need an open and close. So the idea is that when we open the file, it is opening the handle to the copy that's in the temp directory. And when you close it, it closes that handle, and then at that point moves it to the destination. So I do need those. I do need a get error to confirm that the file is opened correctly. So these need to come with me down here. KF. Oh, that's weird. It's not indenting correctly, even when I use KF. I need the error code and the file handle. Copy. I'm not sure if I need is handle open. I guess I do. And a file doesn't really apply here because I am writing to the file. This is not for reading. This is just for writing. I don't think line number matters. Should line number matter? would there be a situation where if I'm writing to a text file, I want to know how many lines of text into the file I am? I guess it might matter if I'm making a structure. So if I'm creating a text file and I need a way to tell tell the program that's opening the file where things are located, such a listing would be at the top of the file normally. So it might be useful to have the ability to look up which line number we're in, because if we have it, then what we could do is we could start a text file writer, and as we output each new piece of information, we are tracking the line numbers that they go in, and then we can like insert that data at the top. The main reason why I think that might be inelegant for structuring your text file is because it requires reinserting text at the top and at the top of your text file, whereas ideally you would want to place that when you're already at the top of the text file. I'm on the fence about that. For now, I'm going to leave it out, and then if I run into a situation where I need to know the line number that I'm on, I'll just come back and re-add it. So we got the handle, we got the error code. We're not tracking the line number. We are not tracking end of file. We are tracking whether the handle is open, because we need to know that when we are using open and close. The only thing left is I need, instead of read next line, I would say like write next line, or maybe just write. And I might want to do a bit shift left operator, the two left angle brackets, so people can use like the cout style where they have the reader and then they got the data they want to push in using the bit shift operator. But first I'll do like write, and then you can write, and then you can plug in a string to insert or append to the end of the file. Yeah. I can't think of a reason why it would fail. Maybe I'll just do void write to file. I'll just do write. And then we'll do const std string reference string. I suppose it would make sense for me to do it just have it be compatible with anything that uses the O string. That's not something that I'm used to doing. So there's got to be a way for you to generically set it up. And the reason why I would do it that way would be because if somebody wanted to write a file, write like a block of data to a text file, they can set up their own operator to convert into an O stream, and then they don't have to like directly or explicitly convert it into a string before they send it out. what they could do is they could just provide the object, and then the OStream conversion operator would just make it something that can be sent out as text. So yeah, let me. I think this tutorial that I found is for creating a printable version. Yeah, so this is actually for the creating the operator for the thing that you want to serialize. I want to simply I think I'm pretty sure I just make the function accept OStream by reference, and then that's all I need, hopefully. This is another area where if I went to school for C++, I probably already would know how to do this, but yeah, there's a lot of tutorials for overloading the operator for the class that you want to serialize, but not the other way around. Set OStream. I'll tell you what, maybe I can just get a hint from the C header. So if I go std C out, and then control click on it, go to the IO stream header. The header might give me what I need. No. Here. OStream C out. Extern. Is C out actually itself an OStream? Maybe I just need to. Okay, so I guess the OStream automatically accepts, automatically handles all of the types that it wants to take. If you overload an OStream, though, it can accept that. So I guess all I would need to do is I would need to make a member operator and then make an overload for the std basic iOS or OStream. If I wanted to be thorough, what I could do is I could just implement all of these within my class. because it looks like to cover all its bases, this is how stdc out does it. It explicitly handles the conversion of all of these kinds of values, and then handles the stream buffer iOS base. And I'm guessing the one that I care about is basic IO stream or basic OStream. Because when a class goes to, say, override its own OStream operator, that overload converts the output into a format that I can use. So for the moment, I will just do strings with that function. And then once I've got the logic in place, I will add additional ways to write out. So after I've gotten this working, I will override the operator for each of these, so that way somebody can just plug in whatever value they want to serialize to text, and it'll just output it as text, which is maybe a lot of typing, maybe a lot of copy and pasting, but that'll make this a really useful tool. All right, so I've got the basic framework here. I think I can just do right-click, quick actions, and say, oh, I had to do it for each individual function. Yeah. Oh, it's inserting it at the end of the file. Yeah, let me do those implementations manually. Up above, text file reader, not read next line. And down here we've got the core calls. So yeah, I'll do it right here. Two above, two below. So I'll do file error code, file text file writer open, and then do the implementation for close, which is just void file text file writer text file writer close, and then void write with the const reference to a string. Yep. Okay. And that's literally all the implementation there. Now, thankfully, I can just kind of copy and paste most of the code here for open. Looking at the looking at the way that I wound up implementing open, I may just want to break that off into the file Win32 and the file macOS source files, because this is largely just a function written twice. I think originally I was just going to do this all in one function with generic stuff, because fopen is technically generic, but on Win32 you got to use _s instead of fopen. That has different parameters and different logic to it. So I wound up having to just like rewrite the whole thing for Win32. Let me go ahead and fork that off into the platform specific code. So I've already done that with load text file and save text file. I'll do the text file reader open on the platform file as well. Come on. All right, so just copy the whole thing underneath the save text file. Put that here, and this is the Win32 one, so I can just delete all the Mac OS stuff. Get rid of the ifdef for Win32, because this whole thing is inside of an ifdef for Win32. Okay. And now I've got a multiply defined symbol, so I gotta clear this out of here. But before I do, oh, you know, I've got it in my clipboard still. I'll go to File, Mac OS, go to the load text file, and I haven't implemented save text file yet. Because I haven't been working on, I haven't tried to compile this on Mac OS since I added these things to the Windows version. Cool, and then that should be functional for open on the macOS version. Good. And then I can delete this whole thing. Cool. But yeah, the file open code is probably going to be identical. The only difference would be that I would use a W here instead of an R. Yeah, so I guess what I'll do is I'll implement the text file writers output there as well. But first, let me make sure I didn't break anything by moving that over. I'm just going to compile with the changes I've made. Which is taking a surprisingly long time, actually. There we go. That seems to still be working. The escape key still closes the program, which tells me that it's reading my input INI correctly. And that uses text file reader, so I know that the opening is, I didn't break anything. Now I gotta do text file reader or text file writer open. That's going to be platform specific now as well. So I'm going to move that to here below, and then do the same thing for the macOS version. Okay. And then copy all of this code. Copy. Pasta. All right. Now this, I'll change this to W. When you're using fopen or fopens, putting an R means that it's able to read, and putting a W means it's able to write, and putting a B means that it's in binary mode. I'm doing this for text, so I don't use the B. I will use W, and this doesn't. There's only 2 errors showing up here with line number and end of file, and that's because those are not values that I track right now, so I don't initialize them. I don't need to initialize them. When I do file writing, or when I do file reading on the text file reader, that's when these get updated. But I just won't update those when I do the write operation. Okay, so that's that. It has the ability to open the file. Now let's go into the close code, because when closing the handle is actually just identical. It's just fclose. There's not an underscore s version of fclose. So that actually is identical as well. So we've got the ability to open and close, and there's not a lot of differences between the reader and the writer in that case, so I'm sure that this stuff will work fine. Let's go straight into writing. Now the way that we did reading is we would use get s, and that's it wound up being a little bit of a complicated loop here, because what I was doing is I would use a stack allocated buffer to be the destination for reading the next line, and then I had to do a loop to ensure that if the line happened to be more than 200 characters, which would be bad practice, but if it did, then I would have to reallocate the string and append it. But for writing, it's a lot simpler, because the destination file will automatically expand to be the size that we need it. Oh, wait, I skipped a step. Just occurred to me that open can't be done identically, because right now we have it opening the path that we provide directly, and instead we need to be opening up the temp path, because when we go to write, we're not writing directly to the destination. We are writing to the temp folder, into a temp file, and then atomically moving it afterward. So before we move on to writing, I need to actually get this rejiggered. So in this case, native path is not going to be vpath to native path on path. It needs to be a temp path, which is, let me go to the platform specific save text file. When we use fopens here, we used temp file name out. So we generated the path using this stuff. Oh, let me just copy the whole thing and go back to where we've got a problem. So the first call remains the same. That is, if we go to open a new file, we close the previously open file. But actually, now that we're doing a write operation, this is going to be closing the previous temp file, and so we got to move. Oh wait, no, I don't have to do anything here. Inside of the close operation, we will be doing the move, so that's fine. And then here, copying in the bits. So we've got the converted temp path as a wide string, but we need it to be a wide string to pass it to get temp file name. Convert temp path as a wide string. We convert tempter path to converted tempter path. We put it back to backslashes, and then tempter path is passed into get temp file name. Temp file name out receives it, and then that can be passed to the fopen. So in this case, I don't actually need to create the handle here. The handle is actually a member of the class already. What I do need is I need to take and replace the native path.cstring with the converted temp file name out. We're still doing it in write mode. Okay. However, even though we're not using the native path right now, I do need to store it, because the native path will actually be used when we go to close the file. So I'm going to need to head back to the header. And I'm going to make a private member of the text file writer. Handle error code. And I'll do it above these others. I need an std string that's going to be m remember file path. Right, I should say I'll do destination path. So that way when close gets called, we will have the path to copy, or path to move the file to. Yeah, so what we'll do is instead of creating a native path here, we'll say m destination path equals v path to native path. That'll take the path of the destination where we want to put the file from the virtual file path to the actual path on Windows where the file is going to be moved to. And then we don't do anything with it here. We hold on to that, and then during close, we will move it. And then the file handle, instead of pointing towards the destination, it points towards the temp file handle that we open up. So that should be all the modifications we need here. We need to go into close now. And text file writer close. Now we do want to close the handle, m handle, and say that the handle is open now. And this is for tracking, so in case we try to open up a file while we already have an open handle. But what we need to do in addition is we need to move the file atomically. So for this, we're going to need to revert back to the save text file. And this is the code that we invoked. Because this involves Win32 code pretty exclusively, and it's likely to involve macOS platform-specific code, I'm going to go ahead and move the close file text writer close to the platform-specific CPP file. So that way we have separate implementations for each platform that are easy to find. So we'll Control X on that one. And below text file writer open, we'll have text file writer close. And then I'll need to do the same on macOS. I'm not going to bother with the to-do note on that one because it just won't compile until I do it on macOS. Okay, now we've got the platform-specific file handling this. Let's go to copied out the move op and handle it. So we privately have stored the destination already. That does need to be converted, so we'll leave it as a new path is wide, and we'll convert it from destination path. So new path is wide now contains the wide version of the place that we're going to be moving to. Now, this is something that we don't have stored yet. We actually do need to know the path to the temp file, which means that we need to store another string. So if we go back to file.h, we need to add another one, m temp path. And then temp path will be where we store the path. Now, we need to convert that into a wide first. So we need to do new path as wide, temp path as wide. And temp path as wide, I'll convert with another call to this guy. So now we have temp path as wide converted from temp path, and we can use that dot cstring here. And now we have both. The only thing I got to do now is store the temp path as wide, store temp path, this guy, when we go to open the file. Temp path. And that's stored here as temp file name out as a wide. So I need to do mtemp path equals wcar tf8. And then I need to do temp file name out. I think, no, I do need to do cstring. Do I? Oh, it's already a cstring, so I don't need to do .cstring on it. Yeah, so now we've initialized with temp path to be the full file path, so not just the temp directory location, but with the random file name. And if we head back down to close, I think that's all we need. We've got the ability to, so we've closed the file handle already. We've got the new path and the temp path. This being whatever we passed to text file writer open when we opened up the file in the first place. And then we move it. So that should be enough. We got file open, file close, and when we close the file, it will move it to the destination. I feel like I'm forgetting something obvious, but let's be honest, I feel that way most of the time. So I'm just gonna assume that that's working correctly. There's not really a lot to test here. I guess the only thing to test would be to see if opening and closing the file creates the temp file and moves it. So let's go to the test state I've been working in. And instead of doing, say, test file, which I know works at this point, I will use file. That'd be text file writer. And that I'm going to just go ahead and specify a path to a file that I want to write. So I'll put this in the per user data, and it'll be test writer file .txt. Text file writer. Oh, whoopsie. I forgot to use the term public in text file writer. So by default in C++, the private members are first. So like if you don't specify public, it will be private. I could technically change this to struct, and then it would be public by default, but I prefer to use struct for things that are just like plain old data. So I don't know. Like this might be a strange way of doing classes. It's just the way that I prefer. It's the style that I use. Sue me. Yeah, so that should be working now. If we go back to text file writer, the constructor is no longer private. So all this does is it constructs a text file writer on the stack. And then when it goes to close, which it'll automatically do when it's destroyed, it just calls close. So when it comes out off of the stack, it'll close the file and move it. So when I press F5 on this guy, if nothing breaks, we should see the text writer file appear in the user data folder. It will be in the temp folder like very briefly, but we won't have time to see it. Go to data, user. That says move file.txt. Oh, I'm still compiling, so we'll give it a second. And when the thing is finished compiling and is launched, hopefully we'll see a file pop in here that says test file writer.txt. No, instead we got a breakpoint. All right, this occurred because we passed a path that does not start with a file name. So what is the path that I passed it? I passed it a absolute path. When was that done? Dev state init. So in the destructor, I guess. That can't be right. Oh, this is the one that's going to be triggering next. So actually, oh, I see. Okay. When I go to close the text file writer, I am converting to native path unnecessarily. They're already in native path based on how we constructed them in text file writer open. So I was trying to convert to a native path when it was already a native path. So yeah, my bad. Let's see how it goes. Okay, the program launched. I don't see any problems. If we go to the user folder, I don't see the file. So that's not great. What time is it now? 12:09. I do see a temp file. So the temp file seems to be creating just fine. And if we were to open it up in VS Code, it doesn't contain anything. Oh, it wouldn't because I didn't write anything to it. Interesting. So it's not moving the file. I am not getting an error either. Would I expect one? Let me go to the documentation for this. If the function succeeds, the return value is non-zero. If it fails, it's 0. So I guess when I was doing this before, yeah, so when I use it in save text file, I was not doing error checking, so that's bad on me. I should technically say if move file return success or something. What was it? It was non-zero if it succeeds, 0 if it doesn't. So if this is the case, then something went wrong. I would want to use get last error, print last error. I have a helper function that formats and prints the last error message, which I'm probably going to be using that for a number of API calls on this file, so I'm going to want to make this a little bit nicer, but for the moment I got that, and I'll say return I would like to get the actual error code. and parse the actual error code. I guess that's what this is for. Under get last error. For last error. For the moment, I will just return error code. Unhandled, which is just an error that I don't actually know what the error is. I'll come back and see if I can get more data later. I have a simple struct containing file operation error codes that are generic, so these will work on any platform, but I have to wrap it in functions like this. So that means that in this case, I would need to actually parse the get last error code. And I haven't actually had to do that before now. Previously I would get str error to get, to handle errors reading or writing. So I can't just copy and paste the code from somewhere else. I'll have to actually go through the API and figure out which error codes, what they mean, and how to handle them. But for now, let's just do return unhandled so that we know that there's a problem. Really, the only use case I have for it at the moment is to check whether the return was successful, and it's not going to return successful. Okay, if move file is non-zero, then we'll print the last error and then return unhandled. And down, we're going to want to do the same thing down below in the close operation here. So that would mean if and do KC, KU, no, KF, that's right. So if the move file wasn't successful, then we print the last error. Which kind of raises the question to me, what would be the correct way to handle this in runtime in a shipping product? For development purposes, it would be enough to say that we just assert and crash. But in the case of a shipping game, if we suddenly find that we can't move files to the destination, then at this point we know that we have the data that we want in the temp file. So what we could do is we could try and move it somewhere else to a destination a backup destination that we know is safe. But where would that be? I'll have to leave this hanging for the moment. Let's see what happens when we run with the error handling, see what the last error says. Oh, I'm not seeing an error message at all. But shouldn't I be? Feel like I should be. Did I accidentally clear the datadir redirection? No, I didn't. So it should be going into datadir. So the data directory got recreated. There's nothing in the user folder. The temp folder has the file. But there's no error, apparently, when we go to move the file. Doesn't matter that the file is empty. Maybe I have to write something into it before it'll work. I don't see anything in the move file API description suggesting that we have to have contents in the file, but we don't, and I'm wondering now whether that is enough for the move operation to fail. Let's quickly write some data and see what happens. I think we just use fwrite. And we'll just do this prior to moving it. We'll just write example data. And instead of doing string.size, we'll do size of example. And we need m file handle, m handle for the thing. Except for I can't do this here because the file's already closed. So let's do that immediately before close, and then we'll actually have some contents in the file before we try to move it. Okay. User folder's still empty. Example data was written to it, though apparently not correctly. Interesting. I think it's missing the end of file termination is what the problem is. I'll just go ahead and say always open temp files with code. I guess that's not what it is. Yeah, I'll worry about that later, about why it's not opening it up in. It's complaining about the format of the file, but the issue is clearly not that the file is empty. It's just not moving it and not generating an error. I don't know why. Maybe there's something wrong with the paths that I'm using. Let me search my computer for testwriterfile.txt. Yeah, it's not showing up anywhere. I use void tools everything to rapidly search my computer for files, so it's not like I accidentally wrote to the wrong location. Where might I have written to? Or it occurred to me that I didn't actually give a name to the object. I doubt that would make a difference. but you never know. Where's the breakpoint? Oh, it's one that I placed. Yeah, it's piling up in the temp folder, but not in the user folder. Temp file path is wide is wrong. Oh my god. It's always something stupid and it never ceases to amaze me. So what went wrong is that I'm not actually making this the destination. When I was converting UTF-8 to WCAR, I was just putting the temp path into the destination path. So it was trying to move to the same folder as itself, which I don't think would work. Actually, move file, it would be taking temp path is wide, so its origin, the origin file was blank, so it wasn't trying to move from anything. Okay. Oh man, it's always something simple. So now it should work. Oh, got a do bubble, temp, test file, writer, text. So that seems to have opened, but if I wasn't blinking, I thought I saw a warning appear. Didn't I see a warning? Let me try clearing out the folder again. And press F5. Yeah. Error 183. Cannot create a file when that file already exists. So, obviously that's not a problem. It sounds like I'm getting that error 183 when I'm trying to create something that already exists, but what would that be? The data folder? Because I just deleted everything. At least the move semantics seems to be working, or not the move semantics, the move operation seems to be working. Let me go to that line real quick. I'm going to go to print last error. This is where that error 183 must have been called from. And, all right, I have to delete the... Ugh. All right, so this is where the error code was invoked from. It was called when closing, and I go to move file from temp path as wide to new path as wide. The move file operation is giving me that error. The new name must not already exist, is what it says here. So, I guess I'm a little confused, because surely the file doesn't exist when we go to move. So the existing file name is the one in the temp folder. The new file name is where we're moving to. But I don't get the error when it literally does already exist. What the F? What? But when it does already exist, it remains. It's like I'm getting the error code when everything's working, and I don't get it when the error actually occurs. Am I missing something here? If move file. So if move file is non-zero, there's an error. Oh, if this function succeeds, the return value is non-error. So what I'm doing is I'm saying if. Got it. So I have to, yeah. It returns a non-zero when everything is successful. So if this equals 0, that's when there's an error. Okay. Curious though that I actually get an error message when there wasn't a problem. So maybe there's some other place where the error code is generated. All right, got it. Stop. So now I should be getting an error message. Cannot create a file when that file already exists, and that occurs because user already has text file writer.txt in it. If I run this again after deleting it, we got no error message, and the file gets created successfully. So that leads us to the next point of order, which is that what do we do if the file already exists? What if you are writing to a file name that is already in the destination? Which is probably going to be a pretty common occurrence. One example of this might be if you're writing a game preferences file. You can use the ini file writer, which is another helper class that we haven't talked about yet, based on text file writer or text file reader. If you're using ini file writer to output a preferences file, you might be doing that. You will be doing that anytime the player makes a change, and you're going to be writing over the destination. So I don't want there to be a problem when you do that. So the API for move says it will fail when the file already exists. So I guess what we could do is we could put in a check to see if the file's there, and then delete it if it is. There might be some situations though where you might want to use text file writer and not overwrite the destination. For example, if I'm using this when I'm developing the editor, I probably will when I'm using the editor use text file writer to do the creation of certain asset files. Then you may want to present a save as dialog instead if the destination file already exists, and then have the user choose whether they want to overwrite. On the other hand, though, you could already just call file exists, which is the API call I've got. Here, which just checks to see whether the file is where you say it is. Oh, which interestingly, I I must have done this before I did the virtual file path system because it doesn't actually invoke the file path. Yeah, that's gotta, let me change that real quick. So path is only used here, so I need to wrap that in vpath. What is it? Vpath to native file path around path, and then convert that into a C string. Let me do that for there as well. Yeah, so that's right. So you can already call exists. So if you're in the editor and you go in the the developer chooses to hit like file save on a scene file, or chooses to create or save a like a mesh loader file or an asset loader file, then the editor can call exists on it first, and if it does exist, then it can present the save as dialog. Yeah, I think that's okay. So in all cases then, we will be deleting the destination file before we save, because we will be using file writer to replace in the event that somebody chooses to use the save as dialog, or they are working at runtime at the game. So yeah, we just need to make a call to delete the file if it exists. Which we'll probably just do with win32 delete file. Okay. So what we'll do then is we will ourselves call exists, and if it does exist, then we will invoke delete file upon it. Because it says that if it attempts to delete a file that doesn't exist, then it will fail, and we just skip that failure before we start. If the file is read-only, then we have error access denied. We'll have to handle that. Okay, let's go back to where we were. And we're going to text file writer close this guy. So we've closed the file and the file handle. We're getting the pass and we're doing the move. Prior to doing the move, we need to delete. And so to check that, we would use exists, which is the file number function that we provide the vpath for. But actually, maybe not, because this expects a vpath. So what we'll do is we'll just copy this out and do it straight in the function, which might be a little bit much, but I'd rather do the slight duplication than here than have to like implement platform specific, or implement a non-vpath and a vpath version of that function. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. We're on 132 now, so we don't need that. We also don't need the vpath conversion. Okay. And we are not returning anything. I guess we do. I guess in this case we do need to do a return because we need to know what, like if we're using the text file writer and we try to close, we need to know whether it fails due to a read only. So let's do file error code and do a return value on that. And we'll go back to text file writer. do, instead of void, we'll do error code. Close. And then return return to the file write operation, which isn't strictly accurate, but it's what the developer needs to hear. So we'll go back to this guy. So first we're only doing anything if the handle is open. Else return error code. I guess not initialized applies. I don't remember exactly what that means. File operation was attempted with an uninitialized object. Okay. I'll just say not initialized for now, but really anything that's not success is okay. I've got direct mappings up above that I can use for these. We'll use destination path, because we're checking, the whole point of this code is that we're checking the file name that we're looking to. So if so if the file exists and is open, so meaning that if the file did exist, we have just opened it, we close it immediately, and then return with the problem. In this case, return error code. I guess I'll need a new error code for this. Already exists, and then I can add it. This may as well be a switch statement, if I'm being honest. Yeah, we got error code close. What's up with this? Declaration is incompatible. I thought I fixed the declaration, didn't I? Oh, I changed it on file reader. Whoops. its own. This guy. Okay, so we've got temporary handle. We have a slightly better name. Test handle. Okay. Cool. And at this point, we can't do anything. The temporary file is still in the temporary folder. So if the developer wanted to inspect the file that was written, they still can. And if it's on a game player's computer, like on a distribution build of a game, then Windows will eventually clean up the temp folder. So we can just leave it there. I think that's right, anyway. But it's all right. The temp folder winds up being kind of a dumping ground for stuff from other programs anyway. Like, look at all this garbage that's been in here for a while. Like the oldest of which was back in September. So at this point, we will have returned if we can't write, open, or delete, or can't read or I'm getting myself confused. So we've confirmed that in this case we've confirmed the file exists. We might have a failure to open it if there's a permission problem. If it doesn't exist, then that's actually perfectly fine. That's what we want. I suppose I should leave unhandled in here in case there's a... No, I shouldn't. I should leave that be. Because it does not exist as what we want. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and make this a switch statement. And I'll do case 0, case e-access, case e-notent, and then default. And the advantage there being, first, it's a little bit easier to read, but I can also just call break instead of return on does not exist. So e-access needs to be this. E-notent, I don't want to return, I just want to break. I mean, I guess I could have just left an empty, int in the if statement, but whatever. Okay, so if we get a permission failure to read a file, then we've got a problem anyway. We may as well abort. If it's anything besides the file not existing, then we will return. Perfect. I need to take a break. My brain is not working correctly right now. Alrighty, back to it. When I last left off, I was getting myself twisted around this, around the simple act of checking whether a file exists. I think I've rested my brain a little bit, and I can just do it now. Alright, so got a test handle for checking whether the file exists. Got an error code, fopen s with the test handle. I try to open up the file in read mode. If there's no error, then it opens successfully, and I'll know that the file already exists and I can't close correctly. Technically, the handle for the temp file will be closed, and the text file reader will be marked as, or text file writer will be marked as closed. So the dev doesn't have to like include special handling here, but the file won't have saved correctly. So in this case, I will put out a error. Do file text writer close. Wait, what am I doing? I don't. The whole point of this was so that I could delete the file. So if it already exists, then I don't actually need this to be an error condition. Instead, I will just make this void function. Go back to the header, make that a void function. And then coming back to the original file, or the original function. At this point, we know that there is a file, so we need to delete it. And we would call delete file on that. So delete file literally just takes a wide string of the file to delete. So we would do delete file, and we would do m destination path. We need to convert it to a wide string, which, yeah, I would just use wchar. Or I would use, right, I had to actually declare yeah. I should put these up above so I can use them. There we go. And then there we go. So that way I can just use the pre-converted new path is wide. Delete file, new path is wide. And I think that's all it takes. Right. Oh, I need to do .cstring. Okay, new path is wide. And then I can move on. In all other cases, I should be fine. The enoint condition means that the file doesn't exist, which means that that's what we want. These others, where there's a permission issue preventing us from opening the file, I think I'm gonna just ignore. Because we will have to do error handling on the delete call anyway. So in truth, actually, I can just simply call delete file for all cases that are not enoent. Because if there was an issue opening the file, but it does exist, then I will have to handle the error on move file anyway. So that's what I'll do. Instead of doing a switch, I'll do if error code doesn't equal, ent. Meaning that the file exists in any capacity, whether or not you have an issue reading it, then we will call fclose and delete file. And then we'll need to handle that call for delete file if there's a problem. Okay. And then from here on, we'll just handle move file as normal. Okay. So delete file, let's take a look at its, if the function fails, the return value is 0. To get extended error information, get last error. So we'll wrap this as well. If that equals 0, then we will pull an error. And the AP error logging function will allow me to do Python style, where I substitute sections of the text. So I need to provide the path, and in this case I'm not going to use the vpath, I'm going to use the actual path. So we'll do destination path, and then the get last error is going to be this guy. But print last error prints directly to the console anyway for the moment. So what I'll do is I'll just do that, and then call the get print last error on get last error, which isn't exactly clean, but I'll do some cleanup before I commit this anyway. Okay. And we're not doing error codes anymore. Okay. So we got the file deleted if it existed at this point. And we're attempting to move the file afterward. That should be all it takes. I should probably do a I like to do 2 spaces in between my sentences. Okay, and then do the destination path. And now we've got a more helpful message if we have an issue writing to the destination. But now that reason should not be because the file exists. We should have deleted it at this point. Okay, cool. Let's press F5 and see how this goes. The file API is used in a fair number of places, so I think that's why this takes so long to recompile. Okay, so we've launched. We don't have any error codes showing up in the code or in the console. And I don't have the window open still. Let's go to the data. And in user, we've got test writer file.txt. And there's the contents of the temp folder. Let's delete those. Yep. And restart. Confirm that everything's being generated the way we want. We've got the folders again. There's nothing in the temp folder. The destination folder has the file. And now if we launch one more time, we don't have any errors. And the temp folder is empty, suggesting that the file was successfully deleted and replaced. Cool, so that, I think, is a wrap on getting the file open and close operations done. That should be working smoothly. We just need to I suppose if there's a problem deleting, then we might as well just return here. But we'll also have an issue with this location. So yeah, I don't know, just for the sake of not having multiple error messages, I'm just going to go ahead and say return there. And now we need to deal with the ability to write to the file. So if we go to file.h to get to the declaration, currently I'm just doing a simple write function. Eventually I'll need to do host-stream operator overloads. But for now, we'll just do write. The implementation is currently in the platform generic, and I don't see any reason why it should have to be otherwise. Let me go to I'm going to the write function to confirm how I did it there. Save text file. I just used fwrite. That took the string data, size of car, and string.size, and then the f handle. And that's all we need, actually, I think, because fwrite will I think by default fwrite will append. Yeah. So I just call fwrite on it. Does that need to be platform specific? No. Yeah, the only reason why we have that platform specific here is because we have the platform temp stuff going on there. So here we can just do it in the generic file, in the multi-platform file. In this case, we got string.data. The file handle is m_handle. And that's probably all we need. We've got file write. We're taking a regular string. We're just dumping it to the thing with fwrite. So if we go back to where I've created the text file writer, I should be able to do writer.write, and then example line, and then do it again, example line 2, and then this is scoped, so as soon as we go out of scope, it'll close. I can also explicitly call writer.close to close the file, but it's automatically called by the destructor. So press F5 and and hopefully we'll get a file in the temp location where, yeah, no errors. Why do I keep closing that window? I still need it. I keep closing windows that I need. There we go. Go to user, got test file writer, and it's got the output, example line 2. Perfect. The only thing that I might want for the write function specifically would be to automatically insert a new line. Because as you can see, there's no new line. These are written to the same line. I'm on the fence about that right now. I'm thinking that new line characters should be added by whoever is making the file. There's also the question of CRLF endings versus LF endings. The file should default to CRLF. I don't think, because I think that's platform specific. If I open this up in code and use the hex editor to take a look at it, we don't have a CRLF at the end. It just goes straight to end of file, which is fine. Although the inspector lets you inspect every single byte, space, and then exclamation point. But the in the case of adding multiple lines, I'm assuming everything would be all right if I put in a /n. I think Windows would just detect that it's a LF ending string. It might actually be automatically converting it to CRLF, because it still says CRLF on the bottom. And if I was to open this back up in code, it does say CRLF. And if I go to the hex editor, we can see that the new line here is OD, OA. OD being carriage return and OA being the new line. So it seems like the writing functions will automatically handle conversion from /n to /r/n, which is fine. All of the parsing stuff in Enterprise should be handling that automatically. So when you use text file reader or load text file, for example, both on Mac and Windows, it already will convert from CRLF endings to LF endings, so that your parsers don't have to consider the multi-platform line endings. And because the writing is going to be automatically to the platform, it's going to be uniform from the get-go. That's all we need. It can either be CRLF or LF endings on the text files, and the reader will work fine either way. So I guess that's it. The only things left would be to start overloading all of the OStream operators, so that way, instead of doing .write all the time, we can do writer and then bit shift in like that and say we'll do some data, or we can do like a math like a vec3, like we can just like put that out without having to bother to convert it to text ourselves. That's going to be a little bit of a project because that's something I've never done before either, and I'll need to do some research, so I'm not going to do that today. Maybe on another stream. But yeah, for the basics of we've got a file that we open, we write it to the temp folder, and then move it from the temp folder atomically to the destination. That seems to be working perfectly. Yeah, so I guess that's it for now. Do I need to do anything else? I feel like I'm just doing a quick gut check to make sure don't need to do something else right now that I'll forget about tomorrow. I still have to go on the Mac and do the implementation of all these functions, the platform-specific stuff for Mac OS. And in particular on Mac OS, I don't actually have it getting the Tempter path yet. For whatever reason, I gave up partway through getting the Tempter path, even though it's literally the same API, I think, for getting the I just called file manager, default manager, URL for directory, and I just pass it like temp or something in one of these. So I still have to get the correct path for the temp folder on Mac, but then after that, I should be able to just plug in file write and read code. Easy peasy. But yeah, great. So we went from having having the ability to save a file all at once to the ability to create like a stream object that would output to the correct location, so I can just keep appending new data to the end of the file. So that's a wrap for today. I've got to go do some chores and work on some audio stuff. Take care. See you later.